Mr. Man, Australia, Mr. Fussy. Mr. Fussy was fussy about everything. Absolutely everything had to be neat and tidy and in its proper place. Mr. Fussy spent all day and every day rearranging his furniture and making sure that the flowers in his garden stood in a row, and trying to find specks of dust so that there wouldn't be specks of dust, because he spent all his time making sure that there weren't any specks of dust. One fine morning, Mr. Fussy was having breakfast. He was very fussy about what he ate. He opened the jam pot. "Ugh," he said. "It's got bits in it." And he spent most of the morning separating the bits from the jam, or if you prefer, the jam from the bits. Fussy old fusspot, people used to call him. Then Mr. Fussy went in his garden and spent the rest of the day straightening the grass on his lawn. Fussy old fusspot. That evening, Mr. Fussy was in his kitchen, ironing his shoelaces, when he heard a crash outside. "What's to do?" he murmured to himself, and hurried outside to have a look. There was a broken garden gate in one hand and an old battered suitcase in the other, and a sheepish grin on his face stood an untidy person, Mr. Clumsy. "Whoops," he said, holding up the garden gate. "It came off in my hand." "Who," said Mr. Fussy, looking in horror at his garden gate, "are you?" "I'm Mr. Clumsy," replied the untidy person, grinning, and he stepped forward to shake Mr. Fussy's hand, but tripped over and fell on the lawn. "My grass!" cried Mr. Fussy. "My straight grass! You've bent it." And he got on his hands and knees and started straightening the grass. "But what are you doing here in the first place?" he asked over his shoulder. "And why are you here?" "I'm on holiday," said Mr. Clumsy. "On coast trips to visit Tala. I've come to visit. Aren't you pleased to see me?" he continued cheerfully, knocking over flower tools. He got up, picked up his suitcase, knocking over another flower tool for free. Mr. Fussy quite obviously wasn't pleased to see him. "You'd better come in," he muttered. "I say, said Mr. Clumsy, looking through the front door of Mr. Fussy's house. "I say, what a neat little place you got here." And he stepped inside, tripping over his shoelaces. He often does. Knocked over a chair, dropped his suitcase and fell in an untidy heap on the floor. "Whoops," he said. Mr. Fussy shut his eyes, heaved a sigh, and groaned silently to himself. Later that evening, after Mr. Fussy had cooked them a meal, and after Mr. Clumsy had helped with the washing up, 2 broken plates, they sat down to talk. Mr. Fussy said, as he always did, in a neat and tidy fashion. Mr. Clumsy said, as he always did, in a not so neat and tidy fashion. "How long are you staying?" asked Mr. Fussy. "Oh, I don't know," said Mr. Clumsy. "Few days, week, year. I haven't decided." When he woke in the morning, Mr. Fussy got out of bed and went in his bathroom. Oh no," he gasped. "Oh no!" Oh yes, Mr. Clumsy had been there before him. The towels lay in a heap on the floor. The bath was full of water. There were pools of water all over the bathroom floor. Half a tube of toothpaste had been squeezed out onto the mirror. What a mess! Mr. Fussy made it all neat and tidy as quick as he could, trying not to get toothpaste on his fingers. "Morning," said his cousin cheerfully. "I've cooked your breakfast. Sit down." There was an awful mess everywhere. "There we are, breakfast," said Mr. Clumsy, carrying a plate of fried eggs. Broken fried eggs towards the table. Then he tripped over those shoelaces and the eggs flew in the air and they landed all over Mr. Fussy. Sticky, greasy, yellow fried eggs. "Whoops," said Mr. Clumsy. After a week, Mr. Fussy's house didn't look like his house anymore. But after 2 weeks, Mr. Clumsy decided to move on. "Well, thanks for having me," he said to Mr. Fussy. "It was very nice to see you," said Mr. Fussy politely. What he was thinking was not so polite. "It's very nice to see you going." That was what he was thinking. "Well, cheerio," said Mr. Clumsy. Off he went with his battered old suitcase. "Goodbye," called Mr. Fussy, really meaning good riddance. Then Mr. Fussy fussed round his house as he'd never fussed before. Fussy old fusspot. That evening, Mr. Fussy was in his kitchen, polishing an egg, when he heard a crash outside. "Oh no!" he groaned. "Not Mr. Clumsy back again. It can't be. Mustn't be. It isn't." And it wasn't. It was somebody else. Somebody who had just walked straight through Mr. Fussy's garden gate. Somebody who can't help having little accidents